You're experiencing the Sniff Session with your host, Valerie, the Niche Sampler. Welcome back. How has everybody's week been? Again, thank you for those who are tuning in. I hear the calls for Apple Podcasts, but at the moment, we're going to stick with the current format until we get the viewership up, because apparently Apple wants you to pay to be hosted on their platform. And while it isn't a lot of money, I want to commit to it. So I think at least after 21 episodes, we'll expand. But first, let's do a little bit of an accountability check-in, because last week I said I'm going to do more recreational reading. I did that. I finished a book that I had started. And if you follow my TikTok, you will know what it is. I've been reading Ham on Rye by Charles Bukowski. Bukowski is my comfort character. He's my comfort author. I appreciate his writing because he's just really real. I find, okay, all the feminists need to close their ears, but I just find this innate freedom in his work, especially with his alter ego, Hank Chinaski. It just feels like a wonderful life to live, where you can be as human as possible, absolutely flawed, disgusting, and just lean into humanity unfettered. I sometimes feel as though living as a woman, you know that it is advantageous to be put together, to be well-mannered, to be educated, to be gentle, kind, and soft. You're better received that way. But somehow he could be a dastardly drunk and still be a notorious author after all these years. I haven't read any of his poetry, but so far I've been impressed with his writing. I've read his other stuff and it's a vibe. This week I'm leaning into non-fiction, but this is written so well. I've only gone into the first chapter, but this is written so well, I cannot help but recommend this, especially if you're somebody who is in academia or in the sciences, or somebody who enjoys reading up about scientific literature, especially if you're somebody who is more preoccupied with logic and deductive reasoning and just thinking in an ordered way. And the book is The Structure of Science by Ernst Nagel. Do not know who this person is. Nagel sounds like the word for nail in German. And yes, I just really enjoy the writing, because I've been looking for writing inspiration for my academic writing. I'm busy writing a paper, one of my first author papers. It's very exciting. It is nerve-wracking. It is also tiring. It is also great for your daily step count, because sometimes you would rather walk the entire length of your city instead of writing. In any case, let's discuss what I've been wearing this week. I've been quite minimalistic with my scents, mostly because I'm wear testing a lot of stuff. I'm wear testing Le Jardin Retrouvé. I've just finished wear testing some Atelier Materie, and I need to create content about that pretty soon, so you should see that at some point on the other platforms. So let's get into it. A scent that I probably would never have ever picked up had I not received it at Sens is Wonderland by Paradis Sens. This is so yummy. The note list does not equate to what you smell in this bottle. I spoke about this in my first podcast, so you can go there for the full review, but my synopsis of the scent experience is that it is a gourmand linen-y steam from your iron. It's warm, it's moist, it's sweet, it's caramelized. That sounds very strange, but it is accurate, I swear, and it's absolutely yummy. And then it's been a bit colder again, and I wanted something gourmand, but you know, with the weather, you have to prepare for it to warm up as well. Also, I've been walking a lot, so when I walk, it gets really warm on my skin, so I didn't want to be overwhelmingly deep, heavy, wintry and spicy, but I wanted a touch of something gourmand. And I also wanted to share this with you because this is one of the scents that makes me feel so special, so unique, so interesting, because it's not a brand that many people talk about, and it's not necessarily a scent a lot of people have. And I've been wearing a honeyed eucalyptus sweet fragrance, and it's called Le Goût, Étude 1.4, by a brand called Pentalogies, or Study 1.4 Taste. This is a brand that creates fragrances around the five senses, or has created fragrances around the five senses, and each one has a particular profile. Now, obviously, Le Goût is taste, and it is the most delectable, and also therefore one of the more wearable scents in the collection. All of them are very interesting, and some of them are really weird, but I enjoy the branding. The price point's interesting. Look up what the bottle looks like. It has a tongue sticking out of it. I would show you, but I'm going to mirror reverse image this video because I look very wonky the other way around and I cannot deal with it. Next up is kind of a layering combination that I discovered last year, or the year before that, maybe, that I really love. And I go to because it's quite neutral in terms of it's not going to take up a room, but when you get up and close and personal, it's really lovely. And that is layering Accrodisiaque by Versatile Paris. This is a rose vegetal fragrance. It's a little bit spiced. It's really fresh. It's stunning. This is one of the best in the collection. I've got two from them. This one's nearly finished, and I'm going to get another one ASAP because I also love the price point. But I've been layering it with, again, another scent that makes me feel so unique and special because not so many people have it or speak about it. And that is Bête Humaine by Liquide Imaginaires. This is a green mossy fragrance. I know I said that that's missing from my collection, but more of them are missing. This is a green mossy. It's got chestnut. There's some vetiver. It's delectable. It's kind of what you would expect plant sweat to smell like if plants were like athletic horses. Very weird way of describing it, but that's essentially what it is. And this is fantastic for the winter time, but I would envision this as something as universal as a scent like Santal 33 by Le Labo. I think more people need to smell this. I don't understand why nobody's talking about this more. In fact, I predicted that this would do well, but then I smelled Blanche Bête and I realized Blanche Bête would probably be more popular because it's sweet. And then finally, when the sun has been up, I've been reaching for a scent that was on my wish list for two to 3 years. Yeah. And this is Belfiore by Oman Luxury. I am very particular with my florals. I might have mentioned it on here, but I've definitely mentioned it on my TikTok before. Why? Because there are many florals out there, and not every floral is for me. But this one is stunning. It's an osmanthus forward fragrance, but they note it as apricot. And it's got a little bit of a suede-y, waxy finish, but overall it's just sparkling. It's bright, it's happy, it's joy in a bottle, and it's absolutely stunning. Once again, a scent profile you don't typically come across, and is just lovely, happy, and unique. And honestly, when I put together my scents of the week, I realized what I wanted to talk about this week, and that is collecting versus curating. And I definitely don't think one is better than the other, and I think it just depends on your personal preferences. But I do think I prefer one over the other just because of who I am. Now, having a collection of fragrances, obviously you're amassing many bottles of things, and I think the advantage of that is that there's something for any occasion at any time, and you can just pull it out. You have a versatile collection, so it's very fun because you can share this with your friends and family, and there's likely something for anybody who comes to visit. And I think that that's such a beautiful community-oriented way of interacting with fragrance and the fragrance industry. I also think it's a cool way to engage in costume, because often people talk about fragrance as something that you wear as a form of self-expression, but I think it also can be costume, and I think that costume can be a valuable method of going out into the world. So I respect the collectors. I don't necessarily think that every collection is born out of a deep love for something. I think some collections, from what I've seen, are completing things. So it's like, I want every parfum de Marie, I want every this and that. That's okay, but I think that sometimes that could be a bit wasteful, because there are going to be some things that have dents in your collection and things that do not at all. But that's up to you, honestly. It's none of my business. On the curation end of things, I love the concept of curation, because I think that overall my generation has a very interesting interaction with the art of curation. I think this is why apps like Pinterest and Tumblr were so popular. We like putting things together and creating a vibe. And I love putting things together and creating a vibe. And I think that that's what a curated fragrance wardrobe can do for you. You have to sit with yourself and interrogate what you enjoy, what you appreciate, and then you have to see how that fits into your lived experience, what you're doing with your days, and then invest based on these factors and these different things. And for curation, I think this is where the fragrance wardrobe kicks in. It's not a very original concept, but the general vibe is to create a small mass, a critical mass of scents that are purely functional in terms of harmonizing with your life and your self-expression, so that everything gets used and you love everything that you're wearing and they work well together and it makes sense that this is your kind of scent. I think it's cool if somebody can be smelling something and think of you specifically because they think that this is something you would wear. I think that that speaks to a kind of self-knowing that is so deep-rooted that you've even selected your perfumes around this. Now, the fragrance wardrobe scheme that I came up with is basically a 5-piece collection. The first element is a signature fragrance, and this is what Tracy was talking about the other day in terms of a scent that is without fail, meaning that you would wear this regardless of the weather, regardless of the setting, because you know that this is something you love wearing, it's safe, it's comfortable, and it's suitable for many different applications. By Tracy, I mean Invisible Stories, by the way, who you should follow, incredible fragrance writer and content creator. Also a person who works in a perfume store, so smells a lot of things. And a lot of people got confused when I said a signature scent, that I mentioned the other elements, and they said, well, if I have a signature scent, why do I need everything else? And that's because sometimes you get bored. Sometimes you want to zhuzh something up. So you could be wearing your Without Fail or your signature scent, your daily driver, in the office, and maybe you have an evening event and you want to spice things up and you want to be brighter or deeper or spicier or warmer, then you could wear that instead. Or you could layer things together. But also, it's not hard and fast. This is just a framework that could help, that is not so limiting to a single scent, but also is not so vast and encompassing that you're now sitting with tens of bottles of perfume in your house and you only really wear a few of them. So after the signature scent, which if you're lost, I always think that starting with the chypre is the best way to go, because it's kind of a perfect year-round structure. It's got the brightness of the lemon or the citrus top, then the floral labdanum heart is, classically chic, and then you've got kind of a woody base, and that can suit the warmer weathers. And I think that your skin pulls out different notes depending on the environment. So I think this works really well. Otherwise, something that is quite clean and molecular is also a good option. A musk or a molecular note, which we'll get to later because there's an entire collection of fragrances that I want to talk about that kind of suits this more minimalist approach to a scent profile. But it can be anything that you want. Something that you think that you will not get sick of is basically the main port of call that you could wear in most weather settings. But then the weather does change, so then we do have seasonality in the fragrance wardrobe. So you've got something for spring, summer, and fall, winter. And I think that the sense that suits these categories is kind of obvious. The scents that suit are obvious, and that, spring, summer, you put out your florals, you bring out your brighter, clean laundry fragrances, you bring out your skin scents, very obvious. And then fall, winter, you can get deeper, richer, woodier. You bring out your ouds if you're in the Western world, and you bring out your spicy fragrances, your more icky, sticky, delicious gourmands, because they become more comforting and cozy in those settings. And then there is the special occasion scent, the date night scent. I think that a lot of people mark occasions in their life with fragrance, and I think that the special occasion scent is supposed to suit this kind of situation where, if you go to a fancy restaurant, or you go to the opera, or you're going to a gala and you really want to feel elevated, I suppose this is where the element of costuming can come into your fragrance wardrobe. This is where you would wear your special occasion fragrance. And I think this is up to personal taste, but I like ambers, I like roses, I like ambery roses in this setting, and I think I'm going to sneeze. Essentially, the occasion where you would pull out that special dress, that special shoe, that special handbag is where you'd wear this special scent. And these usually are some things that are a little bit more elevated than what you usually are. Although I have to say, as frag heads, special occasions don't exist. Seasonality sometimes doesn't exist. We just sort of wear whatever, whenever we can, whenever we want to. And I back that. I love that for us. And then finally we have the wild card, because you want more than one perfume. So you're probably exploring a lot of things. So you can probably have room for one more thing. Maybe it's something for an aspect of your life that you do, like gymming or your sailing scent or something. I don't know. Whatever your hobby is, you can make a scent for that or choose a scent for that. Otherwise, you could also use the wild card just for joy. There are lots of fragrances that you smell that are lovely that you don't think would be for every day, but you just want to have, and that's where the wild card could fit in. And then, of course, your fragrance wardrobe doesn't have to be composed of 5 100 ml bottles. You could have 30 mls or 10 mls for different seasons beyond your signature, and that means that you could swap them out more frequently. There's a lot of ways you can interact with frameworks that aren't so staunch. And I think that that's a part of the problem with the internet, but also a benefit for the entertainment and marketing industry, where people think that you have to follow hard and fast rules, and you really don't. You have free will. You need to adjust things according to your preferences and desires, because ultimately it's about your joy, right? Right. Speaking of which, another reason why I opt for curation every single time is that you know yourself. So then I think you're less susceptible to weird marketing. For instance, there's this weird ad that the TikTok algorithm of Switzerland is serving me up, and it's for these water flavoring pills where, yeah, that's exactly what they are. They're supposed to be added to your water. They're quite expensive. I've seen them in the grocery store. And honestly, if you can't drink water without putting an expensive pill in it, grow up. Grow up. That's all I have to say to that. There should not be a market for that product. In fact, that product exists already. We call it juice. Or you can have some tea. It's cheaper and a little bit better for you because you can have some trace amounts of antioxidants and minerals. Anyway, that's just my little rant because I think it's quite ridiculous. This week, speaking of curation and experiences, I wanted to talk about the fragrance experience outside of the juice, outside of the scent, because of course that's the main aspect we interact with. But I looked back into some journals of mine. You're not going to get a private reading of my innermost thoughts. I respect past Valerie. But I had a page where I was trying to sort of visualize my future life. And one of the pages had a perfume tray with some scents on it. And I love that for little Val. And I realized that I obviously accomplished this, but then I also realized that the aesthetic of the curated tray was something that really attracted me. And that also made me realize that when I am purchasing fragrances, part of the experience I desire is the luxury of it. So I think that presentation is a very key and important aspect of fragrance branding and the fragrance experience as a whole to me. So when I'm purchasing things, if the bottle is ugly, I'd rather not have it. Another thing, because I prefer curation over collection, I think I can afford to do this. I also hardly ever buy secondhand perfume. I'm not a snob. It's just that I love fragrance and I want so many things. I think it helps tame the beast knowing I have a financial limit. You cannot afford to buy these 10 fragrances right now. So choose the one that you want the most, or save up, or take your time and get there eventually. Because I want to open up that cellophane. I want to hear the crinkle. I want to open up the box or open up the lid and unveil this beautiful bottle in front of me. I want to pump on the spray 3 times before the force pushes up the liquid and finally I get a spritz out there. I want to see what the atomizer is like. I want the whole shebang. I want the whole experience. And that only comes from a brand new bottle. In fact, unless I know the standards of a boutique, I also prefer to buy from a brand's website. For instance, I'm not buying Maison Révélie from Le Bon Marché. I'm not buying it from Printemps. I'm not buying it from any other place than the Maison Révélie website. That's just me. Because I love first of all, I like the extra samples of the new things that I haven't smelled before, just so I can keep up to date. But I also love to see how the brand envisions the customer experience outside of how the retailer does that. And I think that that's such an important aspect of the customer experience. But don't get me wrong, I equally appreciate a kitsch unboxing experience, something that's maximalist and ornate and full of gilding and everything. And I also enjoy a minimalist experience. I don't think you can go wrong. If you're a brand, you can't go wrong with just a basic square or rectangular bottle, white label, black cap. It's a tried and true aesthetic. It works really well. But also having your own injection of personality in there works well. And so for today's scent selection, I've chosen 2 brands that I would say have a minimalist aesthetic. Unfortunately, I can't speak to the unboxing experience because I've yet to purchase from these brands, but I will soon because I do have wishlist items from both of these brands. But in one case, it is a minimalist branding with maximalist fragrance. And the other one is minimalist branding with minimalist fragrances. So let's start minimal and go maximal. We'll start off with the House of Pantomime. This is a brand I discovered last year and it is from the Netherlands. I just saw them online. I just saw them on Instagram. Most of the time, my brand discovery is from scrolling on Javoy and Nose and also scrolling on Instagram. And their entire shtick is creating fragrances where the star of the show is a molecular aroma chemical that is supported by a natural. So I thought we could go, they only have 5 fragrances thus far, and each scent is just named Act, as though we are in some sort of theatrical production. So their branding says no words, just perfume, but if you go onto their website, there's actually a lot going on. So the first one is an ambrette forward scent. I think it's ambretolide and ambrette seed. And it's very clean, a little bit round is how I could describe it. It's a vegetal, musky, round fragrance. This is very clean. This one gives molecular but polished. And then in Act 2, I believe we go, this is the one with cardamom in it. But the cardamom is supporting something else that is milky and sweet. It feels also musky, but it's like sweet paper. I quite enjoy this one, but I think a lot of people will enjoy Act 2. This one feels like it has viral potential, especially those who are of the clean skin Glossier Eucrad. Does not have like a pink pepper vibe to it, but it's definitely likable. And then the one that's on my wish list is Act 3. Oh. It's got some, I don't know what the synthetic is, but the supporting natural is a Laotian oud. One thing I've learned about myself is that if the oud is from Laos, I love it. I want it. Put it on my skin. We work together. We're good. Stunning. Act 3 from Pantomime. This is one I would gatekeep, but honestly, as the most niche corner of the fragrance universe, I think we're okay. I don't think everybody's going to smell like this anytime soon. Then we have Act 4, which is a close second for a favorite for me. This one, I don't know, has some kind of jasmine, lactone, but the main vibe is an aged patchouli. Now, I think that people who do not like patchouli should try this, because I think that this elevates what patchouli is. I think that there's controversy around whether or not aging patchouli is actually beneficial or does anything interesting to the ingredient, but the way it's composed in Act 4 is stunning to me. All of these have a powdery finish. Not overly powdery, but it's not clean, it's not juicy, it's not bright. It has the powderiness and the dryness of a sheet of paper is more what I should say. Then finally we've got Act 5. Act 5 taught me what I don't like about men's fragrances, which is not to say that this is a bad scent, but I think that the synthetic is vetiver, and then it's got galbanum resinoid. When the galbanum comes through, it actually sweetens things up and almost adds a bright touch to it. But the vetiver, that's that stuff that's in all the men's fragrances that makes them quite boring. Yeah, I don't like this. I don't like vetiver. But if you want a generic men's fragrance that smells slightly, just ever so slightly different, or maybe even better, you could try Act 5. But for me, that's not necessary for the collection IMO, in my opinion. And then we go to the crown jewels. Well, the Pantomime is actually a great brand in its own respect, and I think both of these brands need more recognition, need more love, need more acknowledgement. I think what Pantomime has done is fun. It's a little audacious, but it's also really well crafted and well executed. I can see them being universally loved for different people, for different vibes in different ways. They've managed to curate a collection of scents that feel minimalistic but expertly executed and are also really likable, really wearable, but also special. The person who wears these fragrances knows their own taste. A curator more than a collector, maybe. But I really appreciated those fragrances. I appreciate finding new brands that are doing something new, that have something new to say. And I think with the fragrance space just getting so crowded, it can often be hard to find. So it's always exciting when you do. My next discussion, maximalist scents in minimalist design. Beautiful bottles, you should just check them out. Both of you, all of us are on the internet, so you can just type in the name and look for the bottles online and you'll see. Like I said, I don't know what the unboxing experience looks like, but the scents are phenomenal. I was actually very fortunate to come across Thomas de Monaco through a connection, friend of the podcast, Emma Vernon, who is the host of the Perfume Room. She had been invited to an after Aix-en-Provence kind of apéro with Thomas de Monaco, and she obviously wasn't in Milan this year. She will be next year, I hope. And luckily for me, she just extended the invitation for me, or asked if I could go in her stead, and Thomas was really kind and charitable and said yes, and I got to first of all end off Aix-en-Provence with a beautiful soiree, but also discover this new fragrant universe that is just stunning. I found that when designers are involved in a perfume brand, things just are stunning. I think that there's an attention to detail that just goes above and beyond your typical fragrance experience. And with Thomas de Monaco, first of all, the boxes of the Discovery set come with a scent blotter that is also a note breakdown. Thomas was a photographer that turned to perfumery as a passion project, and then he kept gifting his fragrances to friends and family, and they said, you should just make this stuff. And then he decided to just make the stuff. And now you have this beautiful collection of really complex fragrances that are so stunning and, for the most part, highly unique. What I will say about the fragrances, though, is that when you spray them on the blotter, appreciate them on the blotter, but thereafter put it on your skin and see how that performs. This is the truth for every kind of scent, but I noticed very much with this collection that my impressions changed on my skin compared to on the blotter. But you are in for a treat. Get the Discovery set if you can. You are in for a treat. Let's start off with the one that I hadn't worn on my skin, that I had disregarded up until this point, and that is Grand Beau. Smelling my mic. This is a zingy, bright juniper, and it's also quite vetiver-y. It's supposed to have a tuberose heart, but I get this beautiful vetiver forward juniper fragrance, and I think it's an Indonesian vetiver if I'm not mistaken, because it has that hazelnutty vibe that I found to be associated with an Indonesian vetiver. And there's also apparently a seaweed absolute in here that I do not detect. All I know is that this feels comforting in the way that a dad is comforting. Like, you know, when you get a hug from your dad and you're just like, okay, I'm fine, I'm safe, I'm happy. That's what Grand Beau reminds me of. And I remember I got to briefly chat with Thomas, and he's definitely a romantic. He creates fragrances inspired by daily life and his experience of the world. So I often find that imbued in the fragrances as well. Next, we've got Sogado. This is one of my favorites. Honestly, I love most of the fragrances in this collection, I'm not going to lie. This is a mimosa and linden blossom fragrance, but to me, it also has a butteriness that I associate with ylang-ylang, but there isn't any listed in this. Oh, Oh, it's the smoked vanilla. That's why I'm getting ylang ylang. The vanilla used in here has the same butteriness as an ylang ylang does. This almost reminds me of Ylang Ylang Nosy Bear by Paris Monte Carlo, but this mostly reminds me of sunshine and happiness. I remember the first time I smelled this, I thought, oh, this makes me smile. And apparently that's the point of it. So he definitely manages to impart feeling and emotion in his fragrances. The next we've got Eau Coeur. This is the one when I first smelled it, and in fact still now I struggled with, because while I love pink pepper, there's a lot of it in here. It's a very big dose of pink pepper, and then it dries down into more of a bright floral heart. Now, I love florals, but I'm particular with them, as I mentioned before. So this blend of magnolia, osmanthus, and rose, while beautiful, isn't as special as everything else for me. Although this smelled very beautiful on my friend Maria, or Perfumaniac, as you may know her on TikTok. And this is a stunning feminine fragrance. I think a lot of people would love this, but for me, it just doesn't scratch my brain in the way that others do. This is honestly one of my favorites from the brand, and this is Fuego Futuro. When we were at the soiree, there was somebody kind of discussing the scents with us, a colleague of Thomas, and she looked at me and she said, "Which one is your favorite?" And I said, "I'm still deciding." And she says, "I think I know which one you'll like the most." And my first instinct was Sogado, because it was so happy. But then after I sprayed Fuego Futuro on my skin, she said, "I knew you'd like that one." This is a green mate that is smoked and then sits on a creamy blend of woods. Officially, there's some sage, hay, incense, sandalwood, cedarwood, ash, and pepper, and elemi. That's the thing. I've noticed if you put elemi and sandalwood in a fragrance and some saffron, maybe some cypriol, and some vanilla, some amber, I'm interested. I'm always going to be interested. And the Fuego Futuro is, I always say it's unique, and that's such a useless word in this day and age. Maybe I'll bring out a thesaurus next and I can find another way of saying that, but I've not smelled anything like this before. I'm very happy to be smelling this now. My goodness. It almost feels animalic. Again, this is an animalic aspect that's being pulled out from a collection of botanical, green, woody notes. It's probably from the incense, actually. But I love this so much. This is, I think there are two that, now it's three because I smelled the Grand Bon. There are three scents that I will be shuffling in between my hands to decide which of them are going to get my money first. But let's finish the collection. The next is Raw Gold. Raw Gold and I think Grand Bon were previously released, and I think in a special edition. And Raw Gold is going to be an instant love for many people. There's vanilla, saffron, Gaiac wood, so there's a depth in there. This is one of those fragrances that to me reminds me of, in a sweet, deep sense, I'm not saying it's like Angel's Share, but it's in the same direction as those sticky, resinous, sweet fragrances, but it's got a deep, dark undercurrent. I love the use of Gaiac wood in this. It almost has a rubbery facet as well. Although, when I put this on my skin, I don't know which ingredient is responsible for it, but there is something that feels a bit like pee-pee. It just happens on my skin sometimes. Also with tobacco notes, sometimes on my skin this happens. And I want to be that cool person who is happy to smell a little like pee-pee, but unfortunately we live in a society and it's not going to fare well for me in particular. So if we all work together to defeat racism, black girls near you can smell a bit more animalic, a little bit more unctuous, a little bit more unsavory. Finally, sorry for that little sidetrack. Finally, this is the other one that is in deep consideration for a purchase, and that is a new release. And I realized I looked for it online and it's not online yet, but I'll tell you about it. If you listen to my podcast on the Perfume Room podcast, the latest one, you'll know I spoke about this already, and it is Ultima Storia. In fact, this one might be in the lead because it's coming into summertime. I don't even know how to describe this. It is a sweetened orris that's got a zest of lemon. It's got powdery notes like talcum, I guess. But what I appreciate, there's this note called Saphian leather. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means. All I know is that all together, these things come together in a beautiful way. There's also an almond note in here that gives, again, it's giving you clean, office-friendly, but papery in a way. This is something you have to try in order to really understand it. And that most of these fragrances are, I think, speaking about them almost does them a disservice. You just have to get the discovery set. I'm so sorry. Sorry to say I fail you today. The niche sampler has failed you. And I think that's going to be it for today. Within the process of filming this, I've had to stop 3 times for sneezing because it is high allergy season for me. I'm also thinking about what should be next, how long these should be, what is a sufficient amount of time for you, because there are some discovery sets that I have that I want to talk about with you, but they're very big. The Electimus discovery set has 22 fragrances in them, and I want to talk about it because I think it's a brand that people should discover and smell because they've got fantastic stuff. I also have the Boho Boko one. I also have one from Unique. There's so many things. So I would just love some more feedback just to see what matters. Would you prefer smaller segments so I can just do a few from a discovery set? Do you prefer having 2 brands together? Let's discuss. I am going to go back to writing now, but I hope that you are well. Let me know what you're smelling lately. If you're testing anything, tell me about it. Do you have a fragrance wardrobe, or are you more of a collector? And if you are more of a curator, what is missing from your fragrance wardrobe? Let me know. In the meantime, sample before you buy. Happy sniffing.